Hey folks, welcome to part 2 of Dual Swords Guide. Swords Guide, that sounded weird. Okay, the Dual Swords Weapon Guide, I don't know, it's the second part. Let's first start off by talking about the parries. I'm sure many of you want to know the timing. Now, Dual Swords has an abundance of them, so let's just break it down. Most of these parries pretty much are meant to be used against humans, so Dual Swords is pretty good in that regard. Demon Thrust is a little interesting. It's kind of one of the riposte sort of parries. Timing for this is very similar to baseline, so it's just phantom timing. What's interesting about this is that you can attack and defend at the same time. Now, you may not think this is particularly remarkable, and maybe it isn't, but what's really cool about it is that you can actually sequence mid-stance attacks right afterward. So let me demonstrate. I can attack right away. So it can just be like an extension of your attack chains, which is really nice. This unfortunately doesn't mean you can... I've tried to do Demon Thrust into other stances for pre-shifting, but you can see even when I am pre-shifting, it's actually defaulting me back into... I'm trying to follow up, but it's defaulting me into mid-stance. Sorry, it took me a while to say that. So even with pre-shifting, the game will force you back into mid-stance. But yeah, it's pretty neat, and what is interesting about this as well is that it does actually work on yokai attacks as well, because it's just a riposte type of parry, it's a block parry, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's not one with like a dedicated animation, cutscene, or anything flashy like that. And it does work on a variety of burst attacks. Let me demonstrate this as well. That's actually why I use it. It works against that, even though it ate up a ton of my ki. Like I was basically blocking and attacking at the same time, so it will work. But yeah, you can do it in isolation. It's not like the most impressive thing. But yeah, see, it worked against a burst attack. Wouldn't necessarily say it's the best for horn breaks, but yeah, it can just be like an added attack in your combo chains. So definitely one to give a chance. And Nioh 1, I didn't care for it whatsoever. But now with certain changes, it's okay. It's okay. Next up is Piercing Wheel. Piercing Wheel gets a bad rap, in my mind. It has a really weird animation, and it's unclear when to pull it off. But my recommendation is basically wait until the last moment. This is basically human exclusive. And yeah, you counter that. Yeah, wait until the last moment to do it, and it'll generally work. You don't really consume much ki either when it goes off, so it's kind of nice. I'm barely consuming any ki. And as with the Axe's Spirit Storm, you can just dodge right after. Truncate some recovery frames. Try it again. Alright, give me a moment to attack. It's not like the most impressive, but it can allow you to generally work things together. Attack. Yeah, not the coolest, but it's handy. And again, what's the timing for that? Just do it pretty much on reaction, you'll be in good shape. Whee! Alright. You die. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward one. Just wait kind of until the last moment, and then you're good to go. And I've had bosses parry skills of mine with it. I don't know if that for certain works against human bosses, so I'm not going to say it does. I hardly use it because it is pretty much exclusive to humans. And then there's Punish the Proud, which is kind of hilarious. Punish the Proud, you have to be very early with it, but it's kind of like Cuckoo's Call, in which you basically are holding it for a brief period of time. So don't do it on reaction. I got a little lucky there, admittedly. What's nice is that it has a knockback, but what's really good about it is the amount of time that you can brace it. So if you do it on reaction, you're generally gonna mess up, but if you do it beforehand, you'll get it. See how he's kind of like blocking? Let me get this guy out of commission so that I can show the full animation of it. Alright, so let's bring it up again. So it's a little weird of an animation, right? But you see how I'm just bracing for some sort of impact? And that actually is in play for quite a while. So as long as an enemy makes contact during that, you will kick them back. This again only works against humans, unfortunately. It'd be hilarious if you could like knock back a Tsunade with it, wouldn't it? But yeah, don't do it on reaction. Do it prepare it beforehand, and you're good to go. Now you may wonder, hey, why would I want to kick them back? Don't I want them close to me? Well, you can set things up. Like that. So that's a pretty cool way to set things up. Remember, anytime you can control where an enemy is going to be, it's pretty awesome. Also, it's pretty reasonable. You can actually dodge out of it, by the way. So you can dodge right out of it. Which is pretty cool. Oh, wow. Okay, let's try again. It's actually not too bad to try to do a random slice right afterwards, since you know exactly where the opponent more or less is going to be. Yeah, just having the ability to knock an enemy down is pretty awesome. Anytime you can control an enemy, it's pretty neat. So you can knock them down, get that final blow. And plus, it's just so disrespectful to do that against a variety of enemies. Just give them a kick and send them flying. So yeah, it's definitely a different timing, but it's not too bad. It's like, all right, I allow the ability to play out for a little bit, and then I can just kick them over. What I will say is arguably the most difficult parry to pull off is Earthly Flow. Earthly Flow, in my opinion, in Nioh 1 was more useful than it is in Nioh 2, simply because in Nioh 1 it worked against like every attack. And now that in Nioh 2 it doesn't work against burst attacks, it's kind of weird. The thing with Earthly Flow is that the timing is the least intuitive in the game. You basically not only need to you have to do it really early, but you gotta get hit before the actual physical damage comes out. And what is frustrating is that it kind of has like a weird positioning factor to it. So you kind of like sidestep, right? But you gotta get hit during that sidestep. And if you don't do it right, or if you're not in the proper position, you can still hit the target without following up the parry. It's weird. It works basically on any attack excluding burst attacks. Let me see if I can get him to show what weird stuff happens when he does a burst attack. It's really weird. Come on, burst attack one time, please. Oh, I broke the horn by sheer luck. But yeah, you saw how I kind of like move in a weird way, and now my character's looking a weird way. But yeah, it is, in my opinion, the hardest parry. What's the timing for it? It's like, let's just say brute parry timing. The brute, the brute burst counter, right? Imagine you're trying to time that, let's say, with like a grab or something from like Ubame. You know how it's basically near instant? Yeah, think of it like that. Anyway, look at that weird behavior. I took 1 damage. Like, what? I'm so confused. Like, why is that the case? I don't know. So even though Nioh 1, I would have said this is like super awesome, I would say Nioh 2 is not necessarily something you want to work with unless you're specifically going for style point. Because you have to make sure you get hit in order to get the follow-up, but then it requires positioning and super early timing, so it may not necessarily feel worth it to you. It certainly doesn't feel as worth it to me anymore, even though it still technically works against any attack. But just the strict requirements that require you to get hit, and even though you can have it do some damage, it's just not as impressive. Like, I'm having difficulty nailing the timing. Like, yeah, I get it, and I gotta reposition, but it just seems like such a tall order. It would be cooler if it worked against burst attacks as well. But the fact that all that weird behavior happens and I take a damage is just so strange. It would be so cool to do it against wide AoEs, and so that would be a lot of fun. I think when this attack isn't treated as a burst attack, then it works pretty well, because then it's like, ooh, I get to play with it kind of in the same way I can mess around with Fist Opportunist, which works against anything. And I just kind of wish that Earthly Flow got the love that it felt like it had in Nioh 1. But yeah, so super early timing requires really strict positioning and doesn't feel like you get as much of a payoff as with the other things. And even though it may work in the same way that Demon Thrust does, Demon Thrust is not nearly as demanding as Earthly Flow is. And yeah, it can be frustrating. And I can totally understand why you may not want to use it. So those are just some of the parries. Actually why I ended up on default just using Demon Thrust, because it just works against anything, and I wish Earthly Flow did the same thing. Let's talk about Heavenly Flow before I talk about Strike, which is in my opinion one of the most intuitive human parries of the game. Heavenly Flow has early timing, so I would say kind of times certain time-based things would say Feral. So you know, like when Mitsume Yasura like just dashes at you, it's pretty easy to work with the Phantom there, but Feral's a little trickier. So kind of think of it similar to abilities like that, the Feral burst counter timing. But yeah, so let's try it against. Can't do it on reaction, you need to be a little earlier. Want to attack me again, please? Yeah, attacks that I can see coming, then I generally throw it out in advance. Now you may be wondering, why should I use this instead of Strike, which you're going to say is easier to use. Now the thing is, this actually provides you an attack boost that does not conflict. It's actually really hard for me to do this on reaction. More of a predictive parry, but it will give you a unique attack boost, and let me show that to you. I need to deplete this guy's key. Come on. Are you kidding me? Oh my god, I didn't deplete his key. I killed him, but I didn't deplete his key. Alright, let me get the key out. I should have just done God of Wind. Alright, he's out of key, right? Now let's do Heavenly Flow yet again. Alright, ready? Unique attack damage boost. I think it's in the order of like 10%. Nothing too high, but it doesn't conflict. It's an added boost. So pretty cool. So best used in moments when you can predict an attack's going to come out and you can safely go for the parry, or you want the attack boost. But most players are most likely, myself even included, Heavenly Flow is fun, but I like using Strike more often because it's basically on reaction. You think you're about to get hit, throw it out at the last possible second when you feel comfortable just as you get hit. So yeah, you can be pretty freaking late with this. It's like the most, in my opinion, intuitive parry. You're like, I think I'm gonna get hit. Okay, I guess I'll just press it, because it's almost like on instant reaction that the ability comes out. So when you think you're about to get hit, or when you think you got hit or something, you're like, I guess I throw it out now. So don't be too early with it, but you can still be kind of early with it. So yeah, it's definitely one of the things that you can get really comfortable practicing. Feels very intuitive, and so I know it's a little hard to show, but it's definitely something you can really work with and understand. So I generally like to use Demon Thrust in conjunction with my gameplay, and then if I'm really gonna go for a parry, let's say like last second hit, alright, Strike, boom, I get it. And also the path of the parry in general, in my mind, also seems, god dang it, I can't do this time. The path of the parry as well, it's just really kind of intuitive. You can see it, it's very clear, so I think it'll be fairly easy for you to understand. It's like, okay, just like swat the weapon away, right? Yep, it's just as you see it is just as it works, and it's really good. Too bad it doesn't work against yokai, right? But let's get away from the parries, and let's talking about some other abilities, other ideas that you can work with to really make things enjoyable. So one of the first things I want to talk about is Moonshadow. Now with the addition of Winter Winds, you may not feel as tempted to go for Moonshadow, but Moonshadow does a whopping amount of break damage and also allows a reposition. So yes, you can absolutely do Winter Wind now, which is really cool. But Moonshadow makes it so that you get deflected, which he's not getting deflected, thank you very much. But when you get deflected, what you can do is just press triangle and then do a whopping amount of key damage in the form of break. So good. Definitely something not to be trifled with. See if I can demonstrate it. Nope. Against many opponents, if it punishes them for blocking too much. You have a way to deal with their non-stop blocking. So yeah, you can just like mash triangle, boom. Look at all that key damage. In contrast to, say, Winter Wind, which doesn't really do much key damage, I mean, yeah, it's a skill, so it won't get deflected. But if you do get deflected, then you can just do Moonshadow. Come on, let me do Moonshadow one time, please. Will you just not block? He's gonna be a dumb. Are you gonna be a dum-dum? I guess he's gonna be a dum-dum. So yeah, Moonshadow is absolutely excellent for not only repositioning, but doing a great amount of key damage against an enemy that tends to block spam. Come on, block again. Block again. I'm just gonna mash triangle. Oh, you moved out of the way, you jerk. Well, don't matter. So did I. And now you're gonna suffer some pain. So yeah, it definitely makes the dual swords feel like it's almost a weapon suited for dealing with block-heavy opponents. So definitely recommend that you incorporate Moonshadow into your gameplay. But now let's talk about an ability that just feels weird. Random Slice. Random Slice is quite strange in that it takes some time to start up, and then also has some weird recovery frames. And I have not detected any sort of way to truncate the recovery. Alright. Random Slice also doesn't seem particularly powerful. It also sports kind of off-tracking in the same way which Wild Spear does. So how am I going to address it? Well, my advice would be to use it anytime you want to go for a gap closer. You can see the tracking is kind of weird. But I like to use it after I buffer it from, say, the yokai ability. It feels a lot more natural, and I like to use it in short spurts. And then it doesn't feel as bad. You can also use it to push targets, as you can see, which is kind of funny. I mean, that's not something you should underestimate. But yeah, that's how I like to use it. It's just kind of one of like those nifty things I use, similar to Wild Spear. Feels pretty decent after I buffer an input. But yeah, if you're too close to a target, you're probably gonna whiff it. So I would strongly advise that you be at some appreciable distance away so you can guarantee those hits and take into account the startup animations. Then you'll be in reasonably good shape with it. But as you can see, still having quite a lot of trouble with making sure it hits exactly where I want it to hit. I suppose it's reasonable for status application, but you probably will just have a better bet using other things in its place. But hey, at least you can move a target, right? I guess that's a plus. I don't necessarily think this is going to work on all the big enemies, but it's certainly a lot of fun to use from time to time and helps give some of the variety that I feel Dual Swords kind of desperately needs to really compete in terms of a fun factor. In terms of utility factor, this weapon is by far ridiculous because you can have probably the most damage in the game from it, but in terms of the spice factor, I feel Dual Swords is quite lacking. Well, let's talk about other things instead of me constantly complaining. I've already talked about Spinning Dragon and Sign of the Cross. I believe I already talked about Windstorm. So let's discuss two of the other interesting abilities, Mortal Flow, which recently got a buff, and then Double-Headed Slice. So, Double-Headed Slice, there isn't too much I can talk about this, aside from the fact that it is pretty good for elemental application. Like, it applied that pretty quickly. Also, it's not half bad for zero-key combos. You stand a little bit of ways. Let me see if I can knock him down to demonstrate something that's kind of interesting with it. Okay, knock him down, right? Have a little distance. Oh, it didn't work there. I guess it's best is it best when they're exactly out of key? Let me try to knock him down again. Thank you. Let's try Double-Headed Slice now. Pretty good for a zero-key combo on an enemy that's just winded. So yeah, I like using it for that purpose. It makes it feel a little flashier. Yeah, it doesn't have the best hitbox for enemies that are on the ground, but pretty cool for zero-key combos as well. I usually like to mix it in with a windstorm, winter winds, into double-headed slice. See how windstorm performs against zero-key enemies? Gets them right back up. It's quite powerful. It's definitely a fun one to use, but let's show the elemental status application against a Yoki, since they are quite resistant. Not bad. But yeah, pretty cool. A lot of quick hits. So a lot of quick hits means a lot of potential to apply status ailments. So use that. Let's see how it works with the custom active skills, specifically an Arcana, just to see if it works as I'm hoping it does. I decided to put on fire. Time to find out! Alright, here we go. Not bad at all. Yeah, lots of hits. Alright, you're retired, buddy. So let's start talking about Mortal Flow, which definitely feels a little wonky. Not gonna lie, it's one of those weird abilities. Especially with... Take that off, put it back on. Mortal Flow is kind of interesting. So they buffed it so that it has a bit more of speed and distance, but the question is, when could you use it? So I like to use it as a kind of a quick engage from afar, but as you can see, it can kind of miss. So if I feel safe about going for that engage, if I know a target's going to stay in place, it ain't too bad. Also, I tend to favor it when an enemy is out of key. See, it gets them back up in the same way that Windstorm does, so it can feel kind of fun in that regard. You can also mix it in with Windstorm as well, after a Winter Winds. And then, you know, you can use Winter Winds to sequence into all sorts of things, which is why I really like Winter Winds. It does some key damage, but it's not really good for that. I just like to use it as a brief engage. But you don't want to be too far away. It's not meant for like super far away engagements. You have a variety of other ways to approach that, whether it is Spinning Dragon, whether that is Raijin. You want to bear that in mind. Mortal Flow is also decent for horn breaks. Not the best, but it's decent. You probably have better tools for it. But yeah, I mean, you probably have the safer option of Windstorm, if I'm not mistaken. Storm's pretty good for that. You can even do Long Range Spinning Dragon or Cherry Blossom. But it's yet another option, and it definitely feels pretty cool. And also, and perhaps you may have guessed it, because you are in the air, you can actually avoid all sorts of sweeps if you time it just right. So there are a lot of moments where enemies will attack the ground, sweep sort of fashion. Let me see if I can get lucky with the burst attack, the one that he slams the ground on. Come on. Come on, you can do it. Because I know I've avoided it before. Too late. You gotta be quite early with it. That's one thing I forgot about. Come on, can you do it one more time? Not one more time, man. Whatever, I'll get you out of key. Alright, come on, let's reset you. Do a good amount of key. Then as soon as I see that burst attack, I'm going to try doing Mortal Flow. Just to show you that you can avoid it. And since this horn is broken, I don't have to worry about the horn break thing. Oh, I moved past it. God dang it. Let me try again. Please? Please? Pretty please? Yeah, you can hop over. I just need to prove it. Come on, let me prove it, man. We'll be best buddies, won't we? Oh, it actually did have hyper armor in the second part. Or did I just... Yeah, I didn't get staggered. But you can hop over stuff with proper timing. I just sucked at it. It's quite a rev up time, so you need to plan it in advance. Also, let me check to see if there's a difference between if you're close and far away. I think it's just activation on hit. didn't work there. But I know for sure in the same way in which like swords, heaven flash can avoid things, so can mortal flow. But I like to sequence it with other things as just like a quick little re-engagement option. Alright, so let's... I'm seeing the runtime. Let's just kind of work with what we know so far. There aren't too many options with the dual swords, so a lot of your... Oh my god, can I summarize this stuff, please? Will you let me summarize it? Or are you gonna be a jerk? I think you're gonna be a jerk. Alright. So when it comes to overall variety with the dual swords, there isn't that much, which means you don't have to worry too much about any real complexity. If you are trying to add in all sorts of factors in terms of variety, my advice would be using Spinning Dragon as for like extra range, trying to take advantage of using Raijin a bit more offensively so that you can dodge and hit at the same time, which is quite difficult. If you want to chain abilities together, Winter Wind's perfect for that, so you can sequence things like Windstorm with Double-Headed Slice, with Mortal Flow. The parries, while they do have varying utilities, the fact is you can only pick 2 of them, so you can't really take advantage of them. Sign of the Cross I know I've already talked about, but the thing is, if you take advantage of some of the things I talked about in the last video, like quick firing, Sign of the Cross, so that you can do follow-ups, it definitely helps make the weapon feel a little fresher. But truth be told, there isn't really too much more I can teach you, in all honesty, when it comes to the dual swords, aside from really trying to play to a lot of the niche abilities. So let me just kind of show you the whole spread of things that I work with dual swords. You know, really trying to hammer in as much as I can. Really taking advantage of the repositioning. I did a strike superfluously. But yeah, it's just kind of like, how much more can I do with this weapon? And I haven't discovered anything per se. I mean, that's pretty much what I can do, is really try to set that stuff up. Mix in a soul core for some extra stuff. Like, yeah, that's cool, but it's just, there isn't much more I can think of. But if you do have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to assist. Oh yeah, Mortal Flow won't hit a target. Oh wait, it did hit a target on the ground. I thought it didn't. Maybe I'm just confusing it for something else. Well, this was a massive fail. Pretty much all I can think of is Moonshadow stuff, Winter Wind's pressure. It's just, I find myself playing this weapon in a very derivative fashion. And it is admittedly one of the weapons I'm not that proficient with, and it's not really one of the weapons I even play too often. I think if I check my proficiency, where's it at? Probably on the lower end. Dual Swords level 53, and then you can see I played Axe even more than that. I played Hatchets and Axe more than Dual Swords. Dual Swords is one of the weapons I play the least alongside Odachi, so yeah, not necessarily a weapon that I think I can think of anything more of, but if you have any other questions or if there's something I'm blatantly missing, please do ask. I will show you one last time me trying to take advantage of every ability, but I'm going to have a little difficulty. Just really trying to take advantage of whatever I can. Squeezing in whatever damage is possible. I mean, I can't think of anything else, man! It's hard! Like, when do you use all this stuff? I don't know, I feel like I've used a lot of it. Okay, I know how to dodge. Maybe I can get a mind's eye here and there. But hey, maybe I'm sure someone else can find a better way to play it than I can. Yeah. I mean, sure. I've taught you all I know, man. I've taught you all I know. So I don't think I'll do a third Dual Swords guide unless there's something I've blatantly missed. In terms of variety, there isn't much, but if you can rely upon things like God of Wind, the Sign of the Cross tricks I've talked about, you know the parries, you know how to position with Dual Swords, and that's kind of it. there isn't as much variety as with swords, so there isn't really too much I can teach. I suppose I could try to mix in the Sacred Bird abilities, but I think their utility is fairly obvious, I guess. But I can talk about that if you guys want me to. In any case, I guess I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys next time.